In this lesson, we'll apply some basic materials to our car. So we're picking up directly where we left off. We have these groups that we have defined for our wheel assembly that we built earlier. And now we need to apply some materials to them. Although we saw earlier, if we're back up here at object level and use the method of applying a material here, it applies the material to every single thing inside that container. Well, what we need to do is to use a material node. So very simply, type tab on the keyboard and MAT. That will put material node at the very top of the list here. We'll connect it up and move our display flag. And look at the interface here for the material node. It gives us an option to have a number of materials. And then within each of those materials, a group that we want to apply the material to, and then an option to pick the material that we want to apply. Well, for us, we've got one group here from our option. We know we're going to have three. We have one for the brake drum, one for the chrome elements, and one for the rubber elements. So let's go ahead and make this 3. So you can either come in here and type the number 3, or you can just hit the plus button a couple of times. So the first group that we created and that we want to use here is our tire rubber group. So this is a very easy process. We'll simply come over to the group dropdown. We'll choose the material tire rubber group. And then from the material area here, the icon on the far right will open your floating chooser. And then from the shop or shading operators, remember when we discussed the different contexts of Houdini, we're now working with the shop context as well as the object context. So within the shop context, we want to choose black rubber. We click accept, and now look in our viewport. You can see that the black rubber material has been applied specifically to the group that we defined for our tire rubber. Super cool. Now let's repeat the process and continue to add the remaining materials. Well, we don't have those available to us directly in the shop network yet. We can go ahead and populate our groups, however. Let's come over here, and in our second material, we'll make it the chrome group. And the third material, we will make the brake drum group. Now, if we try to choose our material, like I said, we don't have that available to us from the shop. It's because before it exists inside the shading operators, it needs to exist from the material palette. Remember, we were at the material palette first, and we tried to drag the black rubber over into the scene. Well, when we did it at that point, it didn't really apply. It didn't work very correctly. In fact, it applied it to the main node and made everything the black rubber. Let's scoot this up just a little bit so we can see a little more here. Let's come through and find what we want to use for our chrome or silver elements. I think I'll start with silver for a base for my chrome. So another way to get these into play so that you have them available inside of the shop network from our chooser there is you can highlight it here in the left-hand view and drag it over into this area over here on the right-hand side of the material palette. You'll notice over here that at the top of it, there's a path. The path is /shop. So it's telling you these are the shop operators that you'll have available. So we've already know that our black rubber is there, and now our silver is there. And the other thing that we want is sort of a darker metal color to be this inside part for our brake drum. I think right now probably a good option to start with anyway might be this oxidized steel. Let's start with that and see where it goes. So we're going to click on that. And last time we actually drug this over into the shop area. You can also use this area here, this arrow, and it will pop it over into the right-hand side as well. So now that we've chosen these shaders from the material palette, we can come back over to our network view, to our material node, come over to the second material, and now from the material chooser, we'll grab the floating operator chooser. And this is the chrome group. We're going to start with silver as a base, so we'll choose that, click accept. And you can see here in the viewport that we instantly got a change. We know that our material has been applied now. We can come over to the third tab. This is our brake drum group. And now from the floating chooser, we want to choose that oxidized steel, and we'll click accept there as well. And you can see the change happen in the viewport, and now we know that that material has been applied there as well. So very good job. We've got all of our materials applied to our wheel assembly. Let's kind of look at what we need to do to apply them to the rest of the car. So I'm going to jump back up to the concept car. And now, because we're using the procedural nature of Houdini, I only had to apply those to one of the wheel. Then, of course, that entire thing gets duplicated and moved around so that all of the wheels now have that. Now we need to start thinking about the materials that we want to use here on our car. Now, let's see. We probably want to apply those materials somewhere over here on this branch. Let's notice here that we also have our mismatches back. If we middle click on it, we can see that, yeah, the mismatch is a shop material path. And that's just because we have shaders applied to something on the right-hand side of the merge, but not here on the left-hand side of the merge. And we're going to fix that right now. So let's go ahead and, oops, I turned on my primitive numbers. Sorry about that. We'll just click that again. That'll turn that off. Let's go ahead and middle click here on this attribute promote node. Now, before you may have noticed this, but if you'll look in this third little box of information here, we can see that our geometry that we're pulling in already has some groups that were pre-made for us. Now, this is a very, very, very handy thing to have. You can create these groups in whatever software it is that you might be using to model in. Cinema 4D, Maya, any of those pieces of software, the groups that you create there, depending upon how you set them up, can be exported and will follow along with the OBJ that you export, and you can use them here inside of Houdini. So basically, our modeler has already made these for us, so we don't have to go through and try to select each and every one of these polygons and separate them out and create those groups. They've already been done. So let's count and see what we've got here. We've got 5, it looks like, 5 different material groups or primitive groups that all have this mat at the beginning, so we know that those are all 4 materials. Okay, so in the next lesson, we'll add our second material node and begin to partition off and apply those materials to our car.